Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of College Football Uncensored, brought to you by Saturday Down South and Texas Pete. I'm your host, Tyler Huck, and with me, as always, my co-host, Chris Marler. Chris, it is a big week.
How about them frogs?
The Horned Frogs.
You want to talk about a school that just did their best. This is why I kept mixing up them in Kansas State last week, because they do the same stupid, like, crypt and blood, like, gang signs, but for, like, white people in the Midwest. Are you excited? How excited are you for this national championship compared to, like, the last, I don't know, 10? Like, where does this rank in, in fucking excitement level?
I mean, it's the largest spread in college football playoff history, which that only dates back to 2014, but still.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we've seen this lopsided of a matchup. So that does take a little bit of the luster off of it, but it's still a national championship game. It doesn't hurt that, TCU is an excellent offensive team. So is Ohio State. Ohio State was able to put up numbers on Georgia's defense in the last game. So, hey, look, maybe, TCU is one of the best teams against the spread all year. So I'm just interested. What's that?
They're 10-3 against the spread this year.
Right. 10-3 against the spread. It's the fourth best out of the FBS. So this game may be better than we're anticipating. People forget.
I'll say this: they've just been disrespected all year. They every week that we just think that we know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, people forget that they were undefeated, or maybe they don't, but they were undefeated until that last game, where honestly they got a little aggressive at the end. Yeah. Maybe thinking they'd probably get into the playoff no matter what. I mean, that game easily could have been won as well. So they've gone through a gauntlet of teams. I mean, they've played, including the Big 12 championship and the game against Michigan, they've played 6 ranked teams this year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. I am excited. Probably not as much as I have been for past matchups, but it'll be a good game.
I feel like I'm going, which I'm super pumped about.
Wait, you're going to the game?
Yeah.
When did that happen?
Because we have the best listeners in the fucking world. So I'm going with a good friend of mine now, and one of our listeners, Lillian. I'm not going to say her last name correctly. So
it's interesting. I didn't get the same offer from Lillian.
You don't know her. You don't talk to her. You show up to one game a year, and you just hoard yourself away in the behind the velvet ropes of your VIP section while you're talking shit about David Pollock.
By the way, that guy on Twitter this week. Wow.
We should start there, because this has been I know that people get annoyed sometimes about like when I generalize people on Twitter, but I have to say this was a wild week on social media. And I didn't think it would be, because the game hasn't really been I think everyone kind of feels like Georgia's going to win, and I'm way I'm less excited about the game strictly because it's in LA and the setup there than I am, and it's also going to rain somehow, than I am about the matchup.
Thanks, Jeff, in the comments. No LBBs in SoFi.
What is it?
Yeah, I mean, it sucks that it's not in the Rose Bowl. SoFi Stadium, I'm sure is cool, but nothing beats the Rose Bowl.
No, I've never been to the Rose Bowl. It's okay. The only thing that I listed on our wedding registry when I was engaged was tickets to the Rose Bowl, because I didn't know what else to say. And I was like, it's a fucking candle holders. I don't know. I've wanted to go there since I was a kid, man. It's just so yeah, it's kind of like a shame that the whole Jesse Fowler brought it up in the chat. They're not going to allow tailgating in the parking lot.
That seems weird, and seems like nobody's going to listen to that. I'm not advocating for breaking the law, but I mean, come on.
I am, and don't pay your taxes either, guys. Let me talk to you guys for a second. No, I think that I really do want, for the first time in my life, I want Georgia fans to be peak drunk, obnoxious Georgia fans, and just be I don't give a shit. dirty fried chicken hands, just like rubbing it on like the walls of that place. That like, I assume they're only doing it because they're trying to make everyone go buy drinks inside. But it sucks.
Feels like they'd probably do that anyways. I don't know, just guess.
I don't
know. Well, we do have a TCU expert coming on because we know, obviously a lot of our listeners know a lot about the Dogs, and we're of course going to cover the Dogs. Yeah. But I feel like they probably don't know a lot about TCU outside the fact that they had a surprise year and Sonny Dykes' first game or first year as a TCU coach. By the way, Sonny Dykes. Had you just told me this guy's name is Sonny Dykes and he coaches for TCU, I would have thought he was at least 62 years old.
How is he not 62
53. I mean, that's relatively young.
He does not look like he's 53.
I know. Well, and that's the other thing. And so when you watch him, you think he's probably 63 as well, but he's not. He's 53.
White back. Well, I guess.
So we will be bringing on what I think this guy, and we'll just tease it for now, but I think he's probably the most knowledgeable TCU. I wouldn't say he's a journalist, but he runs his own website and is very knowledgeable about TCU. Probably the best I've seen out there.
And we've seen dozens for sure, or at least a handful. He is the leading expert. I believe it's actually on his LinkedIn that he's a leading expert on all things horns and frogs. Yeah. Which is like you find people that can do one of those things. You rarely find someone that knows horns as well as frogs. Yeah, just because it's so difficult to study those, like both of those things. But he's a
and I think the TCU stuff almost just came like he knew a lot about horns, like you said, like French horns, trumpets, those kind of things, and all sorts of kind of frogs. And then I think it almost was like at first people were like, just like, oh, you should cover TCU because it's the horn frog. But then he just took it under his wing and like really went with it. And now he is probably the foremost expert on TCU. So we're really excited to have him on.
Too, which is kind of weird. Like I don't know if it's a vegan thing or if it's just like the frogs, but TCU is an interesting thing. We talked about this like last week. I did the deep dive on campus, and it's like their entire history is very confusing, and it's also very much like it's a great school, and like it's a very good school. It seems like everyone that goes there really likes it, but it seems like they really like it in the same way that people go to like Liberty, really like Liberty, or like Southern Baptist Church. They really like that, or CrossFit. I don't know.
Yeah. Here locally, I actually, our mutual friend and how we met, Jason King, we had a job together out of college where we were traveling around, doing basketball tournaments, and we worked with some guys that had just graduated from TCU. Right. And I would liken their like just the aura about them to like Emory kids.
Oh,
yeah.
It is a 88 to 12% difference in terms of like their student body that's affluent and has like lesser than, and it's I love like reading through their facts. Their facts almost read exactly like how if you ever got trapped in a conversation with somebody from Jeopardy that was like, but just the part where they were like, tell us a fun story about yourself, where it's like they come back from a commercial and rest in peace, Alex Trebek would be like, so Gwendolyn, you were telling us a funny story about how you masturbate your cats. I couldn't think of anything else. This is not appropriate. I don't know why I said that. I don't know why I said that. This is so
I don't know. I couldn't see that happening.
We gotta
Jeopardy.
We gotta leave. This is bad.
Well, unfortunately, the thing about doing these podcasts live is can't really start over. Or we could leave it as a little like for the over 50 of you that are here. By the way, thank you for being here. Maybe we leave that as a little nugget for them. We could totally start over and we just cut the video off of YouTube when it goes live, and then the podcast never knows that we talked. Only the 53 people, now 40 for some reason.
Oh man, shouldn't talk about those cats. A lot of dog people in here, I guess. That's my bad. No, we'll just leave it because I don't like. There was some other stuff that we said that was probably good. I don't know, but also, Tyler and I met with our new marketing team.
We met with corporate today.
We did, and it was like actually good.
Yeah, it was good. I really liked them, and I think there's some big plans for the show for next football season.
And
we're not necessarily going in any
place is an actual plan.
Yeah, and we're not going in necessarily a different direction, but there will definitely be a little bit more structure to the pod, definitely more opportunities, definitely some recurring segments. So
less masturbation jokes about animals,
less jokes about bestiality.
Tough.
Yeah, it's going to be great. But we're still in this season. And in this season, we got one more game to go, Chris.
Yeah.
We got Georgia. We got TCU. Somewhat surprisingly, TCU. I think most people had Georgia and Michigan matching up in this one. Before we get to the game, though, a couple things have happened. Now, before we go off and on all of our jokes, got to talk about the Buffalo Bills safety, DeMar Hamlin.
That's tough.
Sounds like things are going to be okay as far as the worst is concerned. It sounds like he actually woke up today and became conscious and basically was asking who won the game. So that's about as best news as you could probably get in that situation. It has thrown everyone into a loop. It seems like the entire world was watching the game when it happened. I mean, everyone, my Twitter timeline was just, that's all it was that night. Crazy to watch. Never could have expected that, literally, I don't know if you heard what happened as to why it happened, but it's just the biggest freak accident thing that you could ever. Like, he got hit in the exact spot just hard enough in between heartbeats. Like, it's like a 1 in a trillion thing. I mean, that's not a real stat, but
No, it was like obviously awful because you already heard. First off, my mom delivered me the news, and this is, I don't know if your mom's like this because
she also delivered you.
Very true. She didn't do it herself; she had help, but not for my dad. But we all know that. So but she, I don't know if it's like something with like getting older, but like my mom will call me now, and before we get into like, I'm like, hey, how you been? And I'm like, just very lighthearted question, and she'll almost always open up with like, well, so and so died, and I'm like, okay. So she just texted me this. I think this Bills player just died on the field, and I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then she texted me back again, and I don't know if she'd been.
Mom, he's doing the Dougie, Mom. He's doing the fake. He's doing the gritty with the fake hamstring.
Yeah, but she was like, she wrote me back to explain it, but like she had literally a typo at every single key word of the sentence, and I was like, "What the hell is going on?" And so I finally called her. It was live basketball. And then, you see the hit, and it was awful. It was absolutely awful. And there's no way to segue out of that. We're glad he's okay. Yeah. And we have a special guest. It's not him.
It's not
him. But it's him, like the way the kids say it.
Oh yeah, the kids. Do we bring him in now? Him?
Is he ready?
Well, let's
see.
Like
I'm getting like a lot of like Matt Foley vibes right now from our group. Do you know his name?
I don't. Why don't you introduce him? We'll see what you say.
Hey, Buckaroo.
Howdy.
That's it's so good to have you on the pod. So this is Tyler. Tyler, introduce yourself.
Hey, Texas Christian University expert. We welcome you to the show.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful to be here, which is Texan for it's wonderful to be here. So,
okay,
yeah, it's a little fun fact there.
Are you from Texas? Did you live there your whole life?
I am from Texas. I was born here where TCU exists in Corpus Christi, Texas.
That is Corpus Christi.
I think you're saying there's corpses there, but it's also a Christian school.
It is a Christian school,
right? Yeah.
Which, I think that's a big part of what we do, our success. We do feel though that Texas and Christian kind of goes without saying, but that's just us. We're not like other schools. We're special. We're special school.
Okay,
you guys are very special.
Yeah. So Chris was informing me about your background. You had a real knack for knowing different types of horns, French horns, trumpets, tubas, the things of that nature.
Some people would say you're a horn addict.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean I have been called horny a few times. Which, it's would be a hilarious joke for other universities, but not here at Texas Christian.
It's not a joke.
We take horns very seriously. One, the only horn that I'm not a fan of is horns on the devil. So, I would say I'm a 99% expert on horns.
Okay.
That's good. Well,
what about the Longhorns?
There's always room for growth.
Yeah.
I mean,
Longhorns? I know it's an in-state rivalry, but
I mean, look, Longhorns are fine horns. I would say I prefer my horns a little bit more amphibious. If you know what I'm saying, because of our mascot is different than Texas's. So
sure.
This is it's an animal, but it's also purple, which is cool.
Yeah.
So I was doing some research on this, and there's a lot of fun facts that I need you to explain. One, explain the difference between a frog and a toad. Like I know at Thanksgiving, my dad used to always say that like a casserole and a souffle are the same thing, but like a souffle is either French or gay. Like that, and that was like always what he said. I'm pretty sure it was not factual.
Or PC,
but just toad and frog.
Yeah, so toad and frog. So to begin, they're spelt differently. They use different letters from the English alphabet. If you look, a frog is a little bit more slippery.
Okay.
I think that's the thing. So if you try to catch one, you're like, I don't know if this is a toad or a frog, and if it's very slippery, you go, there goes a frog. But if you catch it and you're like, oh, this one's not very slippery, then that's a toad.
Yeah. Okay. Literally, that's it.
Yeah, that's all that science has gotten towards. We would love to know, more about each species, but it really boils down to slippiness.
And also you can boil frogs.
You can boil frogs if you can catch them, but I don't know if you heard the fun. They're slippery, so.
Oh yeah.
That's true.
Speaking of slippery, Max Duggan. Some people have called him white Michael Vick with red hair. It actually was just you. You're the only person that said it. Explain that analogy.
Yeah, I mean, so Michael Vick, we all remember him. He was not, in fact, a Caucasian male.
True.
But he was very fast with the quarterback plays. And now slippery. we have a quarterback, yes, that we feel is a slippery, running quarterback. And so I looked and I was like, let me find a white guy to compare this guy to. And I don't know if you guys know this, not as many mobile white quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So so I kind of I'll be honest.
A lot of times they're like more dry skin. They're not slippery because we don't lotion ourselves that much. We got a lot of ashiness.
No, and you got to be careful here in this Texas sun that we have out here in Texas. So
I like that.
So I probably should have Googled a little bit more than I did. At first, I thought it was great. I was like, we got another, Andy Dalton on our hands because I just saw his hair. Sure. And then he started running, and I was like, oof, I got to find somebody else to compare him to. So,
and of course, it'd be Vic.
Yeah.
What would you say is kind of obviously, as you know, TCU went through the regular season undefeated. Mm-hmm. What would you say was the defining moment of the illustrious season that the Horned Frogs have had this year?
Yeah, I would say winning the last game is that's really what cemented the undefeated season in my mind.
Yeah, that's fair.
I would say every win helped build up to the undefeated season, and in that last game, I was like, man, I feel confident now calling this an undefeated season. It was a bit of a hot take, but I felt good about it.
Yeah, it's fair. It was a 62-14 win, so as you're saying, it was a close game. It defined the season for sure.
Yeah. It was a fun time. We call them we call those fun games out here in Texas when you win by a lot.
Okay. Who would you say is the offensive MVP on TCU?
Besides Jesus.
Well, see, that's the thing. I don't know if Jesus was, I think, he surrounded himself, you could say, with the whole team as well. I think it's not very Christian of me to pick anybody over anybody else. So I would say the whole team, the whole offense does it. Either that or obviously the quarterback.
Yeah, he's a clear-cut choice for sure. We kind of thought that was a layup, but it was. I'm reading some of your history right now, and this is one thing that I was very just confused on, and I wanted just some explanation. So TCU actually was formed in Fort Worth, where it's currently located, not Corpus Christi, but it's in Fort Worth. And then with there's a value system, and it's loosely based on Christianity. And 10 years into the university being a school, they left and had to go to Waco, where their rival was, in Baylor, because of all the saloons that opened. So I guess my question is, how does a university get cucked out of their own campus from 1890s tombstone saloons? What happened there?
Yeah, so as you guys know, the Waco is where Baylor's located. Baylor, we went to try to share Jesus with them.
Yeah.
Which obviously didn't take. We know that by some of the news we've seen from the last decade or so out of Baylor. But we were like, you know what, Fort Worth, I think they're good. I think we can put them on cruise control for a little bit. Let's go see what Waco has to offer. Yeah. And then we came on back. We said we like the Texas Sun a little bit better right here in Fort Worth, Fort Worthington, as it's known here by the locals. Yeah. It was actually founded, I don't know if you know this, by Fortress Worthington, who was the son of an oil baron who migrated here from Europe. So really we're founded by immigrants.
Here that he was a street magician that used to race pigeons. That's what it says. It doesn't say anything about that.
See, so we thought he was a street magician at first, right. But it turns out there's nothing magic about him. He just stole people's wallets. But street magician sounds better than thief.
Yeah.
Right.
The pigeon racing actually was an accident. He wasn't trying to race the pigeons. He was trying to catch them. They were one of his favorite game time snacks.
Yeah.
And with that, we also heard he was actually from Des Moines, Iowa, not Europe.
Well,
it pisses me off when French people do that. Like when they put an E at the end of grill, it's horseshit.
Right. Yeah.
Des Moines should be Des Moines.
Yeah, Des Moines actually is in Europe. I don't know if you know that, if you've looked it up.
Oh.
But
no, it's in Iowa.
Well, one of them is, but there's
Des Moines, Germany?
I don't know what it's called now. They've had some, that landscape changes all the time over there. It's a pre-World War I country.
Constantly at war.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little
yeah.
Okay. Well, this has been great. We need one final thing.
We need a prediction
first. You're a huge TCU supporter, but there's the fight song is everyone's favorite at TCU, and so we don't know the words, and I was just hoping you could teach us and also our audience the fight song real quick before you go.
Yeah. So it's very simple. It's a very simple thing to do. What you do is now first there's a bit of an action to it.
Okay.
So if you can get on your haunches, we try to do that, but I know stadiums are tight, so don't feel the need to do that. You at home,
have a haunch.
You got plenty of room. Get on down on your haunches, like a big old slippery frog. And so the fight song goes: jump, jump, you mighty jumpers, you amphibious athletes from Fort Worth.
To amphibian and beyond.
Yep, jump, jump, because of Jesus.
Okay.
Who was the jumpiest Jesus this side of the Mississippi.
Can't argue that for sure, yeah.
So, and then it repeats itself 2 or 3 times. We did have a version where it got to leap, but we felt like, let's just shorten that down to jump. Yeah. All the touchdowns we've been scoring, we had to shorten that thing up. Otherwise, we'd still be playing it, So
fair, perfect. Fair. Well, listen, Frank, or whatever your name was, we really appreciate this.
Yeah, it was Ned. So.
Oh shit! It's literally a conversation we have with our boss today, corporate. Well, I would say tell everyone where they can find you, but I don't think that's safe for anybody. We appreciate you coming on here. We'll have to do it again next year when TCU's in the Meineke Car Care Bowl.
You know what? I'm really looking forward to it. I think we should. I can't wait for us to play in just every single bowl. That's the goal, right?
Yeah, love it.
Is you just collect them like Pokemans?
Perfect.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the.
We're coming for you, Sugar Bowl. That one's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll get in touch with you soon. We appreciate this.
Wait. We got to get a prediction from Ned, or what was your name again?
Yeah, I mean, my name was Frank. I would say number one prediction, fun. You know, I think number one, fun. Number two prediction, I believe that God will be given all the glory because we are Texas Christian, which is double Christian. If you don't know how Texas works,
I think that's going to get a lot of the glory, but
yeah. And then I would say, my third prediction, TCU, a lot of fun, mess of fun, maybe a mess of points. Maybe about maybe about 30 or so. And I would say Georgia, if they don't pray hard enough, I think they're only going to have 28.
Wow, a TCU victory in the under.
A TCU victory. Why stop now? Nobody's beaten us yet, except that one.
It was like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now that we're talking about the Lord, it's making me uncomfortable. So we got to go. We're gonna break the rest of this down. We appreciate you very much, sir.
Okay, I'll pray for y'all out there in the South. So
it won't work. All right, that was our interview with Frank or Ned.
I couldn't really tell what he actually what his actual name was.
I'm pretty sure that we should not have hired that guy because he did not know anything.
All right, dude. I'll be honest. I kind of let you handle the booking of that guest, and I don't really know where you found that guy.
Well, it was at the zoo next to all the amphibians. So there's that. Should we get into this game and give an actual proper breakdown? Do we need to talk about Bobby Petrino for a second?
Chris,
it happened.
And it just happened in the most Bobby Petrino way possible, where he took another job in Vegas and then left promptly, like he's done so many times. That to me is going to be a total disaster. I can't imagine their two personalities mixed with DJ Durkin and just arising out of the ashes that was Texas A&M 2022 and somehow getting this train back on the tracks.
Yeah, I don't believe that he's this whole thing, from a perception standpoint, is that you're trying to convince everyone that you're going to give up play calling. I just don't believe he's going to do that. There's just no part of me that thinks he's going to actually do that. Bobby Petrino's a great coach. He's still a great offensive mind. He's been successful everywhere, especially the points they put up.
Real piece of shit.
But I think that, who gives a shit?
No, I said real piece of shit though.
Pretty big piece of shit. And this evil triumvirate of him, Jimbo Fisher, and then DJ Durkin might be the old, he killed someone kind of, but he's in this current situation now from where all the attention is. He's somehow flying under the radar because of these two idiots. I think that he's going to obviously be heavily involved in that offense. Will get better because one, the bar has been set so low, and then two, he is a really, really good coach. When you said it, I thought it was a joke because I was he just got hired 20 days ago.
Yeah, that guy's a piece of work, man. I'd be shocked if that ends up making Texas A&M somewhat a great team all of a sudden.
Well, they're going to improve on offense.
They should, but once that starts to go wrong, can you imagine the battle of egos when Jimbo and Bobby Petrino? I can't even believe that we're saying that.
And neither
Jimbo
one of them
and Bobby Petrino
responsibility for it. Listen, Jimbo's move is to deny everything, project on the other person that's giving him criticism, and then threaten to leave. Petrino's move is just leaving. He just leaves. I also, going back to the Twitter thing, I tweeted that he just got hired 20 days ago and he's abandoned more kids than Sean Kemp as just a low-hanging fruit joke. Somebody fucking tagged Sean Kemp in the tweet and was like, "What'd you say it to his face?" And I was like, I don't.
It's kind of like when I called Pollock a dick, and then one of our loyal listeners tagged Pollock and said, "You just called him a dick on your podcast."
Yeah.
Thanks, bro.
I think it was fun to watch that unfold this week for sure. And then the old Takes Exposed thing, which is just a whole nightmare. But
somebody picked that that tweet up, like a big your tweet became a meme.
Sorry, what? Yeah, it's the old Takes Exposed.
No, it was something different. I'll try to find it while we riff a little bit.
It's that tweet though.
That tweet about Bobby Petrino got picked up somewhere.
Oh, good. Okay.
Somebody sent it to me.
I thought you meant the one about Stetson and Dwan Mathis and all that. All right.
Some of my content got stolen this week.
Your content?
The tweet that I had with the offensive lineman for Florida State lining up at receiver.
Mm-hmm.
Some people tagged me in a video of someone taking my exact tweet, cutting my name out, and making it an Instagram post, and I had like 15,000 likes.
Who was it?
It was like, I think it might have been someone from SDS. Well, SDS follows it. Laterals?
Oh God. I don't know who that is.
You don't know what that is? Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. So in the comments, we've got I don't know how to break this to you, but Bobby Petrino was not ever riding a bike that day. That was not a real thing. But there's something about the Michigan investigation. I have no idea what Michigan investigation is going on. Apparently, Jim Harbaugh is flirting again with pretending to go to the NFL. It's a whole thing. Let's get into this game, though.
Oh, wait. Before we get into it, did you see just like an hour ago, Michigan was served a notice of allegations by the NCAA?
Okay, that's what he's talking about? What happened? Wait. Please tell me it's bad.
It's not bad. It said it was minor things that happened, but the investigation is in how Michigan handled it. So it could end up being bad. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know.
Maybe Harbaugh will try to bail out of there. I
wonder if that might have had something to do with it. You never know. All right. So national championship game.
Yes.
It's I mean, what an incredible feat from both teams, really. But honestly, it's hard to look at this and not continue to throw praise at Georgia. Because I mean, where we were a couple of years ago, and just the jokes that were made from like Florida fans, from me sometimes in jest, like the national perception of Kirby Smart was that he couldn't win the big one. The Mark Richt 2.0 thing was like one of the most ridiculous things ever. And you fast forward just 2 short years, he is on the doorstep of doing something Nick Saban's never done, that only 3 programs have done since 1980. Win back-to-back championships, and he's doing it at a time where it's more difficult than ever to do it. And he is, like, honestly, I feel like at the top of his field in almost every single part. It's like, wait, he's got lack of institutional control? That's like really bad. That's really bad.
No, I don't think
okay.
that...
Anyway, but what Kirby's been able to do this year, and it's like, I know we've talked about it ad nauseum, and I know that fans might be tired of hearing it. I don't know. But it's insane to look at this and really look at the numbers of, you lose 15 draft picks, you lose 5 first rounders off that defense, you come back and you're somehow better, and you dominate at an even like higher success rate than a year ago. I mean, that Ohio State game, the one thing that bothered me about the Ohio State, like the fans like bitching about it, was it wasn't that the refs gave it to somebody on either side. It wasn't that Georgia's secondary played bad or they couldn't get a pass. That was just 1 versus 1. Like those are the 2 best teams, and it was best on best. And I think I said this in the last pod, but what I came away with is some, like, maybe the most impressive part was Ohio State played a perfect game. Georgia made a ton of mistakes and things they don't normally do, and they still won. And
I was looking at PFF earlier. I think that might have been their lowest graded game of the year.
Okay.
The Ohio State game. So they did play a pretty poor game for their standards. It wasn't a terrible game.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a little concerned that, and I had some listeners respectfully call me out on my Keely Ringo got cooked comments from last.
Oh, God.
There were some stats that showed that it wasn't actually him that got cooked. It was the rest of the DBs.
Mm-hmm.
So my bad. Thank you for, I will admit that I was wrong on that. I probably had 10 to 15 bourbons by the time I came to. So, my analysis of the game was probably a little off, but got to be a little bit concerned about the back end. Max Duggan is top 10 in PFF rating for like passes 20 or more yards down the field.
Yeah, they actually are top 3 in the country in explosive plays from scrimmage of 30, 40, 50, 60 yards. They're actually number 1 in the country in 50 and 60 yards.
So that does scare me a little bit after the last game. But bottom line, I mean, Georgia obviously deserves to be here. They won it last year, like you said, took a step back a little bit in terms of leadership. Maybe not necessarily talent, although probably talent as well. But definitely leadership, and to go undefeated to this point,
Right.
and after just such an incredible game on Saturday, Dogs fans got to be riding high. This is the largest point spread, like I said before, in college football playoff history, which isn't a long history. I get it. But TCU is also doing some things that haven't been seen in a long time. They're the longest
they deserve to be here too.
They're the longest preseason odds to ever reach the college football playoff at 200 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
The next biggest odds, by the way, 2013 Auburn, 500.
I know. I'm so glad that finally got that. You know, the longest odds before that, 2010 Auburn. Yeah.
Yeah, they're the longest odds for a team to eventually win the national championship, but that was only 50 to 1. So we'll get into Georgia as well, but let's start with TCU. TCU, Sonny Dykes, first season as TCU head coach, 53 years old, like I said before, 5-7 last season. They fire Gary Patterson. He waddles his way on over to Austin, Texas, and gets on the Longhorn staff. Preseason, they're finished to pick 7th in the Big 12.
That's insane.
I notably picked them to have a season win total under 6.5. Always nice to do the under on a 6.5 win total and have the team make the national championship. But
that is tough, Brandon Walker.
Look, I mean, you run through their schedule, and they have played 6 ranked teams, all in the top 20 or better, and they won all of them except that Big 12 national
they actually played
conference
7.
championship.
They just played one of them twice. I mean, one of those, granted, is Oklahoma and Oklahoma State.
Right, ranked at the time for sure.
Right. Yeah, like, you know, again, like I think it's like one of those things. It's an incredible story, and regardless of what happens on Saturday or on, I guess, Monday, it's better for the sport for having like this team do what they did in Michigan last week, especially. And it's fun. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a fun offense, it's a fun story, all that kind of stuff. You know, like, we're not going to dash all their dreams yet, because I think that like it's not going to be too much of a guess of where we're going to lean on who wins. But I think like when you look at what TCU does well, this is what I was kind of doing with last night, because I did a deep dive on it and just trying to like learn as much as possible, because we've watched some of their games, but all their games have kind of followed the same path, it seems like, which is like you're losing in the half, that you have like a decent first quarter or like an uncharacteristic first half, and you're losing at the half, and then you come on strong late. Like their second half scoring offense, I think they're averaging I have that in here somewhere. They're averaging like 20 or 18 points per game, which is 3rd in the country. You know, I think the key to getting Georgia, and I've said this for 2 years now, and Ohio State proved it, Bama did it last year, you have to get them in an uncomfortable position, because like they're not used to, and they've come back from like most of those games. Again, I mean, you're talking about the last 2 years, man. They played 29 games. They are 28-1. And 26 of the 29 games they've won by, 25 to 29, 28 they won were by double digits or more. Think about that. There's been 3 games they played in the past 2 seasons they've won. They were within 1 score.
So there's that, and then on the flip side, not as many games in this stat, but 10 of the last 12 games for TCU have been decided by 10 points or less.
Right. And you also look at what they've done against ranked opponents, especially as it's gotten more difficult. So they've only beaten 1 ranked opponent by more than a touchdown all year. Like, and I'm not including Oklahoma. So in their last 6 games against ranked opponents, they have only beaten one of those teams by more than a touchdown. And that team just so happened to be the one they later lost to in the Big 12 championship. You know, I'm not going to go in here and think that they're going to get shut out by any means, just because, or that they're not going to be like, they're going to be so overmatched, because we saw what they did against Michigan, and it's a very like foundationally strong team. I would say trying to be built like Georgia. It's not anywhere close on par with that. But like I said, like the concerns I have are, we had a question from Willie in the comments that said, how many sacks have they given up? They have given up their sacks allowed. Hold on, I have it in front of me here. Because Georgia is still 4th in the country in sacks. It's actually not that bad. They've given up 24 total sacks. I don't think it's going to play a huge part of it because Georgia hasn't really put up a lot of great numbers. They have had 4 in each of their past 2 or 3 games. One thing I will say to this I thought was interesting that stood out. When they've played ranked opponents, right, and talk about Texas, Kansas State, both Kansas State games, and then also the last game against Michigan. In those last 4 games against ranked opponents, and then also in their last 5, he's had at least 10 rush attempts. But in the last 4 games against ranked opponents, Max Duggan has had 15 rushes in 3 of them. Doesn't put up like a lot of great like numbers. Doesn't really kill you with his legs. He's a good runner close to the goal line, especially. And he flashes at times. But like, I thought it was interesting that they went to the well, and it wasn't just when Kendre Miller was out. That becomes the game plan.
Yeah, and so I think Kendre Miller is supposed to be playing, but he's obviously hampered in some way.
Right.
Harry in the chat makes a good point. The Dogs are suffering a little bit on the edge when it comes to injuries.
Right.
Also, you got Darnell Washington that's a little banged up. He's a clear difference maker on that offense. Ladd McConkey had negative receiving yards in that game against Ohio State.
Yeah.
So there are some injuries on Georgia's side as well. Obviously this comes down to the depth of talent is totally different on these 2 teams.
Yeah, but it has been all season.
But you play in 2 different conferences as well. And it was a great win against Michigan. They did have, I believe, 2 defensive touchdowns against Michigan.
2 pick sixes. I was going through the stats, and it was like, because I didn't get to see most of the game. It was 51-45. And I look at Duggan's line, and it was like 200 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Like, something's not adding up here. In the second half, it kind of seemed like it was just a lot of explosive plays on both sides. This is one thing that was kind of maddening to watch, is like they've got good players, right? Like they've obviously wouldn't be here if they didn't have like some like elite talent that they're putting out on the field. But from like, there's not like a guy that's like, oh my God, every game that guy is just balling out.
Quentin Johnson's really good.
Yeah.
At receiver. True. And Duggan obviously was a Heisman finalist, but
skill position players.
Yeah. So no, you're right. Outside of Quentin Johnson, who is probably going to be, or Johnston, I'm sorry, is probably going to be a first round pick. 6'4", 215. He ended up having over 1,000 yards receiving this year, 6 touchdowns.
Right.
He's a deep threat. He does have some issues with drops, but overall, he is the guy that you've got to stop because, for instance, against Michigan, he had 163 yards receiving and a touchdown. But in that big game, and people may laugh, but in that they had a couple big games this year. First one was at Kansas. Remember, Kansas was undefeated. College Game Day was there.
Right.
All he went on the road and put up his best PFF score of the year, 206 yards receiving and a touchdown. The next week, in a close game against Oklahoma State, 180 yards receiving and a touchdown. He's the guy in the Big 12 championship. He had 137 yards receiving, like I said, against Michigan, 163. So this is the guy Georgia's going to have to key on. Keely Ringo, got to lock him down.
So, and here's the thing that's interesting too, because this is one of the things I looked at last night, because we haven't seen Georgia's secondary struggle like that under Kirby really ever. Like looking at some of like the prop bets even and what people are expecting out in Vegas or setting the lines at least, like to have a huge game from a receiver standpoint. I know what Marvin Harrison did last week. I get all that. And I know what came, with the LSU game in the second half and give it like the 30 points and all that kind of stuff. But when you look at like the big picture of this, in the last 2 years, Kirby Smart's defense has allowed over 300 yards passing, I believe, twice. And they've only done it once to somebody not named Bryce Young. And that was Hendon Hooker. Most of the teams they played even this year from their pass secondary or their pass defense, they gave up under 200 yards, I believe, in 7 of their their 14 games played so far. So it's still a stingy defense. Let's not make any bones about it. But in the last 2 games, like you have this previous 28 games where you've had no signs of weakness besides the Bryce Young game where he goes off. Even Hendon Hooker, who had 300 yards, some of that was late, and that game was never in question in 2021. But like the last game to LSU, you gave up 500 yards passing to both those quarterbacks. Ohio State puts up, over 340 yards against you and 4 touchdowns. I don't think it's a concern. I think that a lot of that is that Ohio State's really talented. I don't see TCU doing that.
Yeah, here's the thing that I will say. I will probably end up betting TCU to cover. Is if you look at all the big games where, not only was it a big rank matchup for them, but they were also coming into the game as an underdog this year. You had the Oklahoma game where they were a 5.5-point underdog and they won 55-24.
Right.
And then you had the Texas game where they went at Texas. They were a 7.5-point underdog and they beat Texas by 7 and held them to 10 points. So they've shown up in these situations where they're underdogs and they've actually outright won. Now, they were a slight underdog to Kansas State in the Big 12 game, and they did lose that game. I will give that caveat, but it was a 1-point spread. But in these other games where they were, more than a field goal underdog, they ended up taking the victory, and some of these games in convincing fashion. So I will probably bet TCU to cover the game, but I don't think there's any value on trying to take them on money line. I just don't see it happening.
It's only plus 350, but I'll also say this, and I love the fact that you brought that up for TCU's favor. And I'm not just trying to be a Debbie Downer to TCU and just like beat or bang the drum for Georgia, but you brought up the fact that what they've done against the ranked teams. Again, in their last 6 games against ranked opponents this year, they're 5-1 with their only loss coming against Kansas State in the Big 12 championship game. But the margin of victory against those ranked teams, they're only averaging 5-point differential. It's 30. They average score putting up 35 points in a game. They've given up an average of 30.8 points to ranked teams in their last 6 games on defense. So a little bit of a concern when you talk about an offense that it has been able to put up points against everyone. But you brought up the thing about the ranked teams and how they've shown up for it. So fun fact, so has Kirby and done it in a ridiculous fashion. Georgia's played 13 games against ranked opponents in the last 2 seasons. They've played 6 of those games against top 5 opponents. They're 12-1 in the 13 games. 10 of those 12 wins were by at least 2 touchdowns. They held opponents to under 20 total points in 10 of those games. They scored over 30 points in 10 of those games. And then you look at this year, because the last 2 years, the sample size, again, 12-1, and the only loss coming in Atlanta. And it's not, they have not just been sneaking by teams like the Ohio State game is an anomaly because in this year alone, Georgia has played 6 ranked teams. They've put up 40 or more points in 5 of those games. 40 or more in 5 of those games. Their point differential, their average margin of victory is 24.5 points per game against ranked opponents alone this year. They have blown out almost everybody. The only game that they didn't have over 40 points was when they took their foot off the gas in the second half against Tennessee. And again, any way you look at it, I love the fact that TCU has been a great second half team, been able to come back. But I will also
Georgia
say
first half might be a great bet.
I don't think so because Georgia's not always great in the first half.
This is why
it's been so confusing because the numbers are not there's you can make the argument for either side just from a betting standpoint. I will say if we want to get to the best bets, oh my god, oh fuck.
Oh god. Okay. I'm gonna take over here. You know what's interesting, and I think maybe at this point that maybe people aren't sleeping on Georgia's offense, but everyone wants to talk about TCU's offense. Actually, advanced analytics wise, statistically on PFF, Georgia has the number 3 offense overall in the country. TCU's at 20. Pass offense, TCU 14, Georgia 8. Run offense, TCU 29, Georgia 20. That mixed with the defense, Georgia's got a significant advantage there. I don't think there's just. I think, like I said, you've got spots on TCU's roster, especially offensively, skill positions, where you have good players
Yeah.
and sometimes elite players. But Georgia's got those in the 2 deep at pretty much every
Right.
position.
I
And
think
that's where a big difference is.
Right. TCU will have to have a lot of chunk plays, but also, I mean, I love that you brought it up because the whole thing for like, you talk about the offensive numbers, like Georgia doesn't rank outside of the top 20 in any statistical category on offense outside of rush yards per game. And they also rank 11th in yards per carry.
Yeah, that's all that really matters to show that you're
Right.
actually a
They don't
good
rank
running
outside
team.
the top 20 in any defensive category except for pass yards per game. And they just so happen to be top 20 in yards per attempt in that part. The only like statistical advantage that I feel like I really found was TCU, their turnover margin, they're +9 this year. It's 15th in the country. Georgia's actually -1 on the year, which ranks like 74th. So that part, again, I talk about the chunk plays. Getting in the red zone, TCU's going to have to find a way to keep Georgia out of the end zone or off the scoreboard, and no one's done that this year. They're number 1 in the country in red zone conversions at 97.4%. So it just feels like every single thing they do well. I love what Stetson's been able to do in playoff games. I did the deep dive the other day about how clutch he's been in the fourth quarter. Go watch the video on YouTube because I worked really hard on it. It's also really, really fascinating. But Stetson Bennett in playoff games, like, which is when it matters most, right? Like in those 3 games that he's played, Michigan last year, Georgia this year, Michigan last year, Bama last year, and then this year against Ohio State, he's averaged 67% completion percentage, 312 passing yards per game, has 8 total passing touchdowns and 1 interception. And you look at the fourth quarter, which I don't think this game's going to come down to that, but Bennett is in playoff games in the fourth quarter. He's completed 88% of his passes, is averaging 19.7 yards per attempt, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. He has been. I kept thinking, I was like, man, this has got to be the best in the country. Like, and then I looked. He has the highest rated highest rated fourth quarter passer rating of any SEC starting quarterback the last 2 seasons. And it's actually the 4th highest in the SEC over the last decade behind Tua, Burrow, and Mac Jones.
Yeah, the statistics for him in the last 2 years, national championship game, this Ohio State game in the fourth quarter just are incredible. Let's see. You want to get into some best bets?
Yeah, I honestly wrote down everything possible. I didn't find that much because I don't know if I trust either one of these teams in the first. Like, I think there's a lot of value in here where you could bet TCU to cover like the first quarter, maybe score first. I think there's probably value in that. I tell you what,
so maybe live bet Georgia.
No, because it won't matter. They won't really. They're 2 touchdowns.
What about Georgia alt line?
So I couldn't find an alt line over 17.5. Like I will say,
I don't think. God, man, that'd be crazy if it got that out of control. TCU hasn't had a game like that all year.
Did you hear what I said about all of the ranked teams Georgia's played?
I did.
Like,
have you seen all the ranked teams that TCU's played?
Yeah,
no, they may not be on the same.
I will say that, like, you look at, like, I guys love like a first half and a first quarter. You look at these numbers. In terms of first half points per game, Georgia 5th in the country, TCU 19th. In second half points per game, Georgia is 10th. TCU is is 3rd. So there might be some value there because we've seen Georgia give up some points, I feel like, late in games, and I think the second half line is -6 in favor of Georgia. The first quarter. So TCU is averaging almost 10 points a game in the first quarter. They're ranked 7th, right? Georgia averages 8.4. They are ranked 17th. On the other side, on defense, they're giving up 2.3 points per game in the first quarter. They're ranked 4th in the country on that. The line is Georgia -3.5, I believe, and the over/under is set at 13.5, and the money is on the over, which I think we've seen a lot of slow starts from Georgia at times to the season.
Yeah, I think TCU's got to be. Well, I don't know exactly where they rank statistically in the first quarter, but I mean,
I
they're.
just told you, idiot.
Oh, sorry.
7th in the country, 9.8.
Oh, well then, yeah, maybe there's some value there. I mean, yeah, I just. Yeah, this one's tough. I mean, this is a huge spread as far as the total is concerned
Right.
for 13.5 for a championship game. That's why I'm going to take TCU. I'm also going to be on the over in this game. I think TCU will be able to put up some points. I think Georgia will put up in the mid 30s at minimum.
Right.
And so I'll go ahead and take the over. I think it's probably my best bet over 62.5. Because I do think TCU is going to put up points as well, but I think Georgia will just put up more.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm trying to find the first quarter line, and I don't know how I'm missing. I got all the team totals for sure. First quarter line, Georgia -3 and the over at 13.5. First half line is -7. All right, this is going through what Georgia's done in the first quarter of games over the last 5 games. They've only put up over 7 points once, and that was against LSU. And one of those touchdowns was a defensive touchdown. That was kind of a fluke. They have not been ahead by what am I trying to say here? Oh, they have not been able to score first in 2 of their last 3 games, which is kind of interesting because TCU scores first in almost all of theirs. They've done it consistently in 5 of their last 6 games and most of the season as well. I think they're going to take the ball first and they're going to try to do as much as they can early. But you look at these big first half spreads that Georgia's had. Georgia, you've heard me bitch about it on here from a gambling standpoint. They've not been great in the first half a lot of times, especially in the second half of the season. The first quarter, they were tied 7-7 with Ohio State. They were up 14-7 on LSU, but again, they had the fluke defensive touchdown. Against Georgia Tech, they were down 3-7. Kentucky was 3-0, and Mississippi State was 7-0. You go to the flip side of that, and TCU's given up more than 1 point in the first quarter just once in their last 5 games. They've been really good in the first quarter.
Okay, maybe that's the bet.
Yeah, I will. I also think that the team total is 24.5.
For TCU, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and they've been held under 25 points just once all season, but Georgia has not given up that many points. There's a thing on DraftKings where you can bet windows of the team totals. So it's if they score 11 to 20 points. I think TCU being held to 11 to 20 points at plus 270. I think there's a lot of value there. Georgia scoring over 30 is plus 300.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, I would
That's
take that
gonna
one
happen
all day.
Yeah. And plus scoring in the 40s is plus 250.
It's more for plus 30 points than 40. That doesn't make any sense.
Because it's 30, it's 31 to 240. It's
I got you. So it has to be exactly within that.
The other one is this. You look at I don't like this bet because it's so hard to predict. But touchdown scores at any time, and then first touchdown scores. Brock Bowers is plus 700 for the first touchdown score. That is remarkably high.
Who's the leader for Georgia? Or lowest odds?
It's him and Kenny McIntosh at plus 700, but there's a lot of value in that. And you look at who scored first in their last games, this is just going backwards. McIntosh, Bowers, Jackson, then McIntosh, Bowers again. They have scored first outside the defensive touchdown. One of them scored first in 4 of the last 5 games. So I like that a lot for sure.
Okay. Those are some good ones. I like the Bowers one. I love the over 30.
Yeah.
Love that. Hey,
also,
we gotta wrap it up here soon for producer Dan, who's flying out to the game tomorrow, very early.
Mm-hmm. Georgia's prop bets for their defense to score a touchdown. This is the wildest stat you're gonna hear. Georgia's odds for their defense or special teams to score a touchdown is plus 200. It's better odds than 6 of the 10 players listed from TCU on the Vegas board.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
All right. So before we make our final prediction here, let's take a quick timeout. Talk about Texas Pete. Texas Pete has the spice and flavor that's kicking this football season up a notch. If you haven't tried the original hot sauce or their new traditional barbecue sauce, run, don't walk to grab yourself a bottle today. Visit TexasPete.com for recipes and hot apparel. Plus, take 20% off your entire order with promo code Uncensored. Win big with Texas Pete when you sauce like you mean it. I just went to a New Year's Day lunch at my parents' house. Found out that my mom went to TexasPete.com, put in promo code Uncensored, got 20% off her order for some Texas Pete that we were able to put on our meal. So fantastic. Shout out mom.
Yeah, shout out moms everywhere.
Yeah. My final prediction, I'm going to go Georgia 42 and tie scoring. TCU 28. It's going to be blowout.
Yeah, Georgia 41-17.
Woo! Woo!
They have
Georgia.
They have nothing for Georgia.
Back-to-back national champs.
The
new Alabama. We want Georgia.
What?
Everyone said we want Bama.
It should be
now
fun, man. I'm flying out on Sunday, and I'm really excited for it. And also enjoy all of this shit too, because I know that we joke around about this stuff on Twitter, but that's I remember in 2015, finally taking a step back, oh shit, you are living in the best era that you will ever see in Georgia football, and they're doing it at a ridiculous levels. It's really, really awesome to watch.
It is. We'll see what happens. We're not going to just give it to Georgia right now, but
we already did.
Not officially. Best of luck to the Dog fans. If you're flying out there, fly safe. Chris, fly safe. Producer Dan, fly safe. I'll be here taking care of my kids. We need you guys to go to Spotify.
Oh, yeah.
And subscribe on Spotify. That is our goal for 2023, is to grow our Spotify. So if you guys could go follow us and subscribe on Spotify, and make sure that you tell your friends about the show so I can start going to some of these games. Chris gets to do all the fun stuff.
All you gotta do is talk to the audience. I've gone to every game for free with our audience members.
Audience, follow me at Tyler Huck on Twitter. All right, guys, we appreciate it. Hey, this is our last preview pod of the year. It's been a fantastic year.
Yeah.
Hope you guys enjoy the game on Monday night. Go Dogs.
Go Frogs.
Go Frogs.
Hey.